I am appreciative, I'm grateful, I am navigating anxiousness, I am humbled, and I'm excited. Thank you so much for joining us today. For as much as the festivals you're able to join, thank you for joining us. Thank you for how you've contributed. Thank you for being willing to be here. My name is Kevin Awusu. I am an associate director with Still Point Theater Collective. And it is my honor to welcome you to our inaugural Social Change Theater Festival. First off, I'd like to say thank you to Lisa for letting this happen. For letting this happen. Just a kind of a story for y'all. How we, one second. I told you, technology. We have the panel starting at 11 o'clock, so we want to make sure that our online participants are able to join us. So we will use this wonderful vamping time to make sure that's set up. But the conversation around this festival started over the summer, and it was a conversation about, one, what are we as Still Point doing in the community? How are we wanting to see an impact of the work we're doing? And as those conversations were starting, it started to transition into a conversation of, well, how are we connecting with other organizations that are doing similar work? How are we connecting into the communities deeper? How are we working in a way that is expanding our impact past just doing one project, but into really linking arms with neighbors and linking arms in communities as we progress year by year and as we go forward. And fast forward 8 months, 7 months, here we are. So thank you for joining us. That is my welcoming speech, so huzzah. I am extremely parched. I don't know if anyone else is parched. We have a few minutes until the next panel starts. Lisa, I'd like to give some space for you to give any thoughts and welcoming from a Still Point background. We have a little moment for that to give folks a little more context about Still Point. And we'll take a little water break, and then we'll jump in with the panel starting at 11 o'clock.
Hey everybody, I'm Lisa Wagner-Carollo.
Take your light.
Oh,
There you go.
I'm Lisa Wagner-Carollo, and I'm the founder and executive director of Still Point Theater Collective. Still Point started back in 1993. I just had a vision, and I'll talk about some of this in the panel, but I had a vision to combine theater performance, outreach, and social change, and also spirituality. And so we started Still Point, I started Still Point, was pretty much alone at that point in 1993. And I was 29 years old at that time and was just really full of passion and a real desire to follow this deep calling that I felt. And the vision really was twofold. It was to do professional shows that we would tour around the country and a little bit overseas, focused on social change and spirituality, and then to also work within our own community, reaching out, helping people to tell their own stories through theater. And so the vision was twofold really from the beginning, because it's all well and good to travel to New Jersey and fill up a church and do a play on the life of Dorothy Day and try to inspire people, to go and do the same as Dorothy. She was a Catholic activist who started the whole Catholic worker movement, which has houses of hospitality all over the United States for people coming off the streets. So it's all well and good to go and do a show about that and try to inspire people, but I also felt like it was imperative that we were working in our own community. And so we started outreach programs to women who were incarcerated, to adults with developmental disabilities, to senior citizens. And during COVID, our work expanded to do programs online because we were trying to find ways to continue our vision. So we had workshops for adults with developmental disabilities online. We started some writing groups online, and our writing teacher is here, Monica Sanchez, who does our intergenerational group. So even through COVID, we really tried to double down and embody our mission. And shortly after the shutdown started, I'll never forget, Nate Smith had already joined our team. By the way, this is Nate Smith, who did the meditation. Nate is now holding down the New York branch of Still Point Theater, which is focused on climate change issues. And he's been with us now 7 years, I think? Yeah, 7 years. And so shortly after the shutdown started, Cleary McCarthy, who was our managing director then, Nate and myself all met, and we said, how can we still do our mission in the midst of the shutdowns? And it was really kind of amazing at how many things came forward and how much good work we were able to do even through COVID. But it was hell. So that's just a little about Still Point. I'll be talking about a lot more in depth about our work in the panel. But this is our inaugural Social Change Theater Festival, and I'm just really happy to be here and really grateful. I've got to say, Kevin was kind of said tongue-in-cheek, thanks to Lisa for letting this happen. Because I really feel like Nate and Kevin had this beautiful vision for this festival. And I try to walk a Christian path, and so sometimes I felt like a real fool for Christ when we were trying to figure out how this was going to happen and how we were going to raise the money. But here we are, and everything has come together. So just really grateful. And however much of the festival you can attend, please do. But we're really happy that you're here at this special moment as we launch the festival. Welcome.
I mean, I think you just have to give another round of applause for such great vamping. That was great information. We learned so much. And that 1 minute, 2 minute water break that I said about, we are exactly at that point. We have the Zoom set up to go. We're just sending it so it can be broadcast to everyone. We'll have someone that is joining us on Zoom that is a part of Workers Teatro. Give us 1 more minute and we'll get everyone on Zoom, and we will start with the Applied Theater panel. Thank you guys so much. mic or no sound? We good? Good. They should be able to.
Hear from HowlRound the speaker to
Can I have this sound? That sounds good.
but the mic is picking up from here.
From that. Is it?
This is
Oh, okay. Well, great.
if we have because this is from here, it will go to there. That's up to
Okay, so what do we need to do to start?
let's see what is the best one here that doesn't
Okay. Are we good right there? Try it. Are we good? Hello? Hello? So there's slight echo. But I think we don't need what is the radio settings? What are the input settings for the audio?
just coming up.
Just how can we turn down the input?
There's no turn on.
You can't turn on the input. We'll make it work. You said there's sound going through here?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the only time we need to turn on the sound is when someone is talking on the other end. For us to be able to hear. We don't need to talk. So we can keep the sound off and leave the mic on.
Yeah.
Because we only need to hear them.
You mean the digital?
Yes.
Let's try.
So turn the sound off on here. Let it record from here. And then when they talk, we can turn the sound off. That's good. Okay. Ready? Check into that real quick to make sure we're good. It should be good. I can't see this. Yeah, turn on mic.
Use the microphone because that one picks up better.
Make it happen.
Just
I like the organic. No, it's okay. I like the organicness.
Jasmine likes being in the center of attention.
Right.
Was that Allison speaking? Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Allison? Do you believe in life after love?
Marcel is still muted.
Myself,
There. Hey.
we hear her though.
okay. Can you unmute that computer for 1 second? It's do it with your finger. It's a touchpad. Hi. Ooh, slightly. Oh, we're good. We're good. Okay. Almost. Allison, we're gonna have to.
He's saying that it's waiting for the host to let her in.
You got it? right there?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
it's working.
Huzzah! I am losing water weight by the second. You know, what I'm always grateful about with events like this is the grace that folks give. Thank you so much. Which is something that I enjoy about working. Like I say, like working on a grassroots level, but I think it's working on a level where you are asking for help and you're asking to be in the same spaces together. So thank you for your grace, thank you for your understanding, and we are ready to begin. Oh goodness. All right, so the first panel that we have up is Applied Theater and Social Change. So first off, I just want to introduce you to our panelists. And then we have some questions that we're going to dive into, have a little bit of a conversation, and then we're going to open it up to the audience as well for some feedback and to join us in the conversation. Starting off, I think we can go through and do some names and pronouns. First off, my name is Kevin Aosu. I use he and his pronouns. And I mentioned before, I'm an associate director with Still Point Theater Collective, and I'm also the founder of the local lab co. And I will pass this way and we will loop around.
Thank you, Kevin. Good morning. My name is Jasmine Cardenas. My pronouns are she, her, ella. And I am co-founder of Workers Teatro, which is a local collective of low-wage working moms, dads, aunts and uncles, immigrant workers, and also African-American workers. And I'm wondering if Isara will be able to introduce herself because she's trying to get into the Zoom. Is she in?
I just sent the link to you.
Oh.
I think we have to.
Is it different link?
I think so.
Oh,
yeah.
she was waiting to get hosted in. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I should have gone the other way.
I'll bring her in a second. Okay. Did you send that via email?
Via email.
Okay, thank you.
But then we'll go to Lisa, and then when Isara is up, we'll go to Isara. But next up, Miss Lisa Biggs.
Hi, I'm Lisa Biggs. I'm the other Lisa. I'm originally from the south side of Chicago. When I was a graduate student at Northwestern doing a PhD in performance studies, I worked with Still Point for about 2 years, a year and a half. I shadowed, followed. Wow.
Technical issues, that's all right.
Let's all take a collective. So I also work with Chicago Children's Theater. We have a practice that we do. It's called a fast 3, where we take a deep breath and then we pat on our lap 3 times and then we exhale after that. So let's just take a second and do all that together because that was great. All right, so I'll take that deep breath in. Pat 3 times. Exhale. Let's do it one more time for good measure. Inhale. Exhale. Woo. That was a roller coaster. Thanks for going on that ride with us. Lisa, please continue.
I'll just pick up where I don't remember where I was, but
You worked with Still Point for 2
so
years.
part of my graduate studies, I did an ethnography with Still Point at the Lake County Women's Facility. And I wrote about that experience in my dissertation. And later on, I incorporated it. It's under pseudonyms in order to protect the identity of the incarcerated people. But in my book, which I brought, I have 2 copies. If people are interested in the lobby, you also are welcome to buy it from the press. But I'm here really to thank Lisa. And I don't know if anyone else from the ensemble is still around from those days, 08, 09, 2010, but
James Cornello.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm to thank them for what they let me learn through the doing of the theater, of the making, through the process of making. I'm now an assistant for, actually newly tenured. Woo! Thank you. Last week, newly tenured associate professor at Brown University.
I'm co-founder and co-director of the Center for Applied Theater in Milwaukee. Before I say anything else, I'm in the midst right now of planning the PTO conference, which will be in Omaha in June. I know what it takes to put something like this together. I just want to thank you guys and acknowledge all the work that so it's
Let people know what PTO is, just in case.
the Pedagogy and Theater of the Oppressed is an organization that focuses on studying and sharing techniques based on the work of Augusto Boal, Theater of the Oppressed, and Paulo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and on extensions of that work as it has changed and developed over the years. Please talk to me if you are at all interested in learning more. There's a 3-day pre-conference that Julien Boal is going to conduct on developing forum theater, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that is later. And then a conference that runs Thursday through Sunday with practitioners from all over the world who will be together to share techniques, share insights, play together. It's really a wonderful conference. It's our 28th.
Yeah.
Is that it? 28th.
Yeah.
So we've been around for a while. The Center for Applied Theater has been around for 24 years. As I said, we're in Milwaukee. I have these questions that Kevin sent that said, where are you from that isn't a place?
We're going to go through those. We're going to go back around. We're going to go back around. You're excited? Okay, we're going to go back around. We're going to go back around.
So that's what I do. I met Boal in '92 and spent at least a few days a year with him for the next 17 years. And so the techniques that I bring, I learned from him, from other practitioners, Patterson and Road, many people.
Thanks for joining us, Mark. I heard there was great traffic down from Wisconsin, so that's Milwaukee.
Yes, Milwaukee.
No, Milwaukee. There we go. I remember states. So that I was heard that's good. That's good news and good luck. So we have blessings on for the rest of the festival. Lisa.
I am Lisa Wagner-Carollo, she, her. You've already heard from me. I'm the founder and executive director of Still Point Theater Collective. So.
Could you actually also just give a little more information about like the work that you have been doing with the women that have been incarcerated? Just a small little background, a little tidbit.
Oh, sure. The company started in '93, and in 1998 we started doing outreach with women who were incarcerated in prisons and jails. Our first program was downtown at the Metropolitan Correctional Center here in Chicago. And right now, though, we also have programming in Kansas City. So we're in 3 cities right now. We're in New York, Chicago primarily, and Kansas City, where I'm teaching at the Johnson County Department of Corrections with women in court-ordered recovery. So, yeah.
Thank you. Allison, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. You guys see my husband too, just walked by.
Tell him to join us.
Some pronouns are she, they. Just so you know, it's a little fuzzy, so if someone asks me a question, I don't answer it. It's not because I'm trying to avoid you. It's I'm missing words. And there's also this intense delay. So I do something and then you see it like 3 seconds later. I am the co-founder of Cornerstone Theater Company, co-founded in 1986, which I'll keep talking about because it was before the internet. Life was really different. And we work with communities, first traveling around the United States, and then we worked primarily in Los Angeles, in California, but still stuff around the country. I did that for 20 years, and Cornerstone is still going strong, although I have not done a project with them in a few years. Then I worked at the Oregon Shaker Festival, directing the American Revolutions program, which was commissioning new plays about moments of change in United States history, and there are a lot of them. And then primarily I'm helping some friends who are starting a theater company in Hudson, New York, called the Foundry Hudson. So hey, if you're on the call, but primarily now I work in climate change. I'm on the board of an organization called Rogue Climate, and there's a lot of stuff to do, and we're trying to get it all done. And thank you.
All right, and next up, was Sarah able to join us on the call?
I think she is there. I think she's the phone Neo.
Phone Neo.
I actually I realized that when I introduced myself, I just said that I'm the co-founder of Workers Theatro, which is actually still just a collective. We're not a nonprofit. We're not a professional theater company. They are working people, regular working Chicagoans. But the reason I know Mark is that I was on the board of PTO, the Pedagogy and Theater of the Oppressed organization. That's an international organization for many years. Because I worked with Augusto Boal back in 2004, 2005 era, and was blessed by those experiences and found my way to PTO. So I just really am grateful to Augusto for so many things, because his phrasing of revolution, rehearsal for the revolution, is what I've held onto in all of these years of work. When I met him, I was working with our population in Rogers Park here in Chicago in an after-school program that was mostly Belizean girls, African-American girls, and Latinas. And our community, and Jamaicans. And our community was really young. And I had studied theater, graduated, came out with like Raisin in the Sun, and that was not interesting. The difficulty I was having with our literacy levels and interest in these old scripts was not helping me to experience the kind of success I knew that my girls could achieve. And so the reason I use Theater of the Oppressed is because I went back to that game book before I started working with Augusto, and started just playing the games out of his book, Games for Actors and Non-Actors. And simply by using those games, we unlocked so much incredible passion, power, intelligence, and real expertise about their lives. And so it's because those games on paper were so powerful to us in a room that I sought out looking for opportunities to learn from him directly, which is what took me to New York City to study with him several summers in a row. And that has continued to fuel all the work I do in Chicago, which right now is Workers Theatro, but before that was for a 10-year stint of time in Lawndale, dealing with Black and brown violence, and that was before George Floyd, before Michael Brown, where we were taking on the issues of Latinos and Black community in North Lawndale, which is North Lawndale and South Lawndale, La Villita. And it was just a really powerful way to bring about change and unity, but all based in Theater of the Oppressed and civic engagement and learning our civic history. So I thought I would just place that, put myself in a timeline for you, because I'm not attached to any professional theater company specifically. I'm the civic artist leader for Looking Glass Theater, which is what brought me to this work, but I'm just an independent artist. Isaura, ¿estás ahí? Si no se escucha, porque quiero incluirte en la llamada. I'm going to introduce you. Sí, está ahí. ¿La podemos ver? Aprenda su cámara. So this is Isaura Martinez, who I'm going to let introduce herself, and I'll translate for her. Isaura would be here in person, but she had a family emergency and had to go out of town.
Hola, mi nombre es Isaura Martínez. Me dio un poquito de trabajo porque mi planta está fallando mucho, pero me da gusto estar aquí con ustedes.
I'm so happy to be here with you all. I had a little bit of technical difficulty getting in, but I'm glad to be here now.
Bueno, pues estoy aquí, conozco aquí a mi niña por mucho tiempo, muchos años, y gracias porque también he tenido la oportunidad también de estar trabajando en equipo con Jasmine Cárdenas, con Workers Theatro, lo cual a mí me ha ayudado bastante en crecimiento y experiencia y para también desarrollarme.
I'm really happy at the opportunity to be here with you all today to share about our work. Jasmine and I have co-founded Workers Teatro, but my experience with Jasmine has been several years long, and it has been about using theater for workers.
Me gusta porque esto es una herramienta que nos ha ayudado para trabajar con nuestra comunidad, como los trabajadores de la villita y trabajadores en general. Workers Teatro les ha sido una herramienta muy buena para también ellos aprender y saber cómo expresarse ante un público o ante una situación de injusticia en su lugar de trabajo.
We've been using theater to work with our community members because it's been a really powerful technique to work with workers, but then also just any other community members that join us, because we've been dealing with injustice and in the workplace, but also like being fired, and it's been a very empowering process.
Tenemos un grupo muy sólido, grande, y bueno, pues el grupo está creciendo, seguimos informando y con Workers Teatro y hemos hecho gran trabajo en nuestros últimos años y pues sigamos adelante con este gran proyecto y este gran trabajo para nuestra comunidad.
We're really excited because we have a pretty solid group now built over the years, and especially in these most recent years, we've done some exciting work, and people keep coming back. And so it's been a good experience to have the level of involvement in community. I'm just going to ask Isaura something. Isaura, ¿crees que se puede quedar un poquito más largo, aunque sea con la cámara? ¿Sí?
Sí,
okay.
Claro que sí, gracias.
Okay, she's going to be able to stay a little longer with us.
Thank you so much for all that, and also we asked them to come as a translator, so we'd like someone to come also do that. We can also facilitate.
Oh, that would be great. Are you comfortable with translating the whole thing, or do you want to just translate the sections that we like, where we include Isaura? Because I explained to her that since she's not in the room, it would be hard to translate the whole thing, but definitely the sections where we're connecting her in. Okay, great. Isaura, me van a apoyar con una traductora y ella va a traducirle por las secciones donde usted está participando, porque como no te tenemos aquí, pues no podemos traducir toda la plática porque se enlarga demasiado como habíamos planeado originalmente, pero las partes donde usted participa vamos a incluir de introducción. ¿Está bien?
Sí, está muy bien.
Ok, gracias Isaura. He must have heard my translations and heard how inaccurate because my brain has a hard time sometimes remembering that I'm translating, and I'm so into the listening, and then I'm like, oh wait, what did she say that I have to translate? So sometimes it's hard for me to double duty as translator and participant, so thank you.
Is that okay, Monica? Because Carmen's here too. We could, you know.
Gracias, Monica. Thank you so much, Monica.
My Spanish is not so good, so I'm going to try my best, but
You're going to do a great job. Please take a second to introduce yourself because you also work with us.
Hi, my name is Monica Sanchez. I am a writing facilitator at Still Point. I run the intergenerational writing group. We meet once a month for about an hour, and we just practice writing, and it's really fun, and I really enjoy it. Currently, I'm not in Chicago. I'm in grad school at U of I. I'm studying curriculum instruction with a focus in bilingual education. And I work with preschoolers, so that's kind of what I do every day. So, yeah.
Thank you for joining us up here on the spot, Monica.
All right, now here comes Mark. The question that you were so excited for. We'll go around in the circle, and then we'll toss it over to the Zoom. The challenge is that you have like 15, 20 seconds to answer. It's gonna be a quick fire round.
Okay.
When you answer that question, can we just translate it so Isaura can hear it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So,
the question. No, let me give the question to everybody, and then I'll give you a second to translate it.
Okay.
And then we'll go ahead and we'll start with Mark and we'll work our way around. Where are you from that isn't a place?
¿Dónde eres que no es un lugar?
¿Dónde eres?
¿Dónde?
¿Dónde eres que no es un lugar? Es como algo que no es literal.
Yeah, Perfecto.
Okay, pues gracias.
See, I was trying to copy, but then all those extra words came in. That went right up. But where are you from that isn't a place, Mark?
Can I cheat for a moment? And
Go ahead.
When I introduced the Center for Applied Theater, I said how old we were and that I work with Lowell. We've worked with groups over 24 years in the United States, in Austria, in Alaska, in Australia, and anyway, we work with anybody that's interested in learning to use the tools that Theater of the Oppressed and related methods apply. But we spent 18 years as teaching artists in Milwaukee Public Schools, one of the most challenged school systems in the country. So just so you know what kind of work we've done that fits. So where am I from?
That isn't a place.
Under normal circumstances, I would say I am from questions, adventures, and joy, which is where I spend most of my time. But to be perfectly honest, for the past 3 or 4 weeks, a lot of times I am from fear and anger, and trying to balance that finding of joy and righteous anger has been difficult at moments.
Thank you, Mark. Lisa, where are you from that isn't a place?
I'll answer, but is she going to translate?
No, she's not going to translate everyone.
Oh, okay.
I'll give her a little summary, and then I'll bring her in.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Where am I from that's not a place? Well, when I saw that question, the first thing that came to mind was just to say this. I very recently have lost both of my parents, and my parents created this amazing household that was full of theater and full of music and singing around the piano together, and just full of art. And so when I made the decision to become an artist full time, you know, a lot of parents would be like, no. But my parents were like, wonderful! You know, they were so supportive and so excited, and, you know, came to all the shows and gave money and were just amazing. And I feel like part of them still lives inside of me. And so I am from Richard and Shirley Wagner.
Thank you for sharing. I won't do a story. I am from dry heat. I am from humidity. I am from the southern tensions. I am also from African spirit, African freedom, and I am from flying through the world, accepting the universe.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Where am I from? I feel like I'm from the sun. I feel very close to the sun. I also feel very close to, I don't know, I guess when I think of that question, I think of 2 places, but not like a literal place, but like just like always feeling in between 2 places. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but I feel like the sun kind of encompasses, it's all everywhere and never in one place. So, yeah.
Thank you. I love that. I as a storyteller, as a professional storyteller, all of my stories come from being from in between places. And I feel similarly to you, is that what I wanted to say about where I'm from is I'm from 2 human beings that left everything they knew because they wanted more for their family and for themselves. And my mom and my dad separately left Colombia, South America, and came to this country with big dreams. And the only reason I come from stability is because of their courage and their love. And my dad, who was a temp worker, just like the workers in Workers Teatro, who couldn't get into a more stable job, kept fighting and joined the Puerto Ricans and the Black Alliance to try to get into the union. And it's because he landed past that test to get into IBEW, which is our local electrical union here in Chicago, is that I come from stability. Because when he hurt himself on the job, we didn't lose our house. He didn't get fired. He had workman's comp. He had the ability to heal and keep working. And that's the only reason I come from so much stability and privilege, to be able to take the dance classes and take the ballet classes and take the acting classes and pursue theater, because that would not have been a choice in Colombia. So I think I come from the stability of love and courage that are immigrants and that are working people. And I'm just so grateful to them. Y ahora estoy compartiendo que la pregunta es ¿de dónde eres? Que no es un lugar. Y yo compartí que soy del amor y de la resistencia de mis padres por ser los trabajadores que son y porque mi papá tuvo la oportunidad de entrar a la Unión. Y por eso es que yo tuve la estabilidad y el privilegio de entrar a la universidad, de ser maestra de artes, de estudiar teatro y baile como niña. Y es como mi equipo, que todos son trabajadores temporales. Entonces, usted también puede contestar de dónde eres, que no es un lugar.
Bueno, esto es pero mucho amor que te lo dejo. Bueno, yo soy de México, yo aquí en Chicago, y yo vengo de la lucha de una mujer donde mis padres fueron muy revolucionistas y vengo con el corazón apasionado de la justicia. Soy una mujer optimista y muy alegre y llamo mucho lo que es el trabajo con mi comunidad.
Okay, so she said that she is from Chicago in Mexico. Something about the revolution.
Her parents were revolutionaries.
That they were revolutionaries. She talked about the community part, and that she's a part of the community. I'm so sorry, I kind of got a little bit cut off. It's hard with the Zoom quality.
Yeah, no, then you got it. That's what she said.
Do you want to get Allison in there too?
Yeah, Allison?
Yes.
Where are you from that isn't a place?
Oh, yes, thank you. I would say I am from the brains and hearts and imaginations of the thousands of people that I have made plays with over the past 40 years.
Oh, that's really sweet. Thank you for sharing with us. Lastly, Lisa?
I'm from back, feet, hands, heart, air,
You get those last ones a couple times. I lost the last ones.
back, feet, hands, air, earth.
Ooh, back, feet, hands, air, earth. The reason why I started with that question, so much of applied theater for me really starts with the stories that we share amongst each other, that we share amongst community. That's what really draws me to it. I feel like it is a way of accessing community through storytelling and through story sharing. I'd like to just kind of open it up, for folks to give their thoughts and also based on their experiences as well. But what is applied theater for you? How has it been a vehicle in your careers? Like not just like the tool itself, but in its practice and how you've gone about its practice. Like how have you seen it impact change as well? Just want to open that up to the floor. We can jump in as we want. On the Zoom, if you want to just put like a finger or a hand up, if you have something to add, we can go ahead and jump over to the Zoom. But yeah. Is that what you say?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm
yes,
better
of
looking
course, of
to
course.
as I'm also reading. So, ¿qué es teatro aplicado para ti? ¿Qué es la manera en que teatro aplicado mezcla con tu vida y con tu path?
Con su camino.
Con su camino, sí.
A round of applause, please, for Monica. Vulnerability and trying, which, in my opinion, are also part of the steps of community and revolution and resistance. Yes, that is a question. So.
I think, the term applied theater is relatively new in terms of thinking about how do we talk about theater. And it has a UK, a United Kingdom, a British, and an Australian root. And it's a way, I think, that artists, activist scholars there about 20 years ago, I'm not good on my math, so sorry, don't. If it was longer than that, then so be it. But as a way of making a distinction between commercial theater, so your Broadways, and theater and education, so teaching artists who work in public school systems. I think they were trying to identify people who do grassroots community-based theater. Sometimes it happens in a school, sometimes it happens in a church basement, sometimes it happens in a prison, sometimes it happens in a backyard. But that the people who are doing theater practice, so teaching technique, teaching acting, teaching playwriting, teaching directing, all at the very same, teaching production, all at the same time, and theater history all at once. So they make also a distinction between theater as like the theater history. So usually a theater historian is not going to teach you how to do acting. It would be surprising if they even had you read a text out loud in some cases in class, even in an important play. But so applied theater from like, I think a UK Australian kind of modality is trying to do that, to make this distinction between the commercial theater, the Broadway, the theater and the education, even the not-for-profit regional theater. They would put that in a separate category, but to really acknowledge that people make theater in all these other places, and with various levels of expertise and with various connections to formal institutions. Oftentimes they have no connection to institutions at all. But I think, that narrative that I've just shared erases, unfortunately, a lot of the work that people have done at the grassroots from the beginning, before the term applied theater got popular, right? And what I mean is, I think back on how, we are always making performance, right? We are always telling our own stories, and we're doing them in forms and in places that are largely inaccessible to theater historians, right? Because they don't care about us. They don't care about us. They don't care about us because we're not on Broadway. We're not famous. We're not making money. We're not, building an archive that is visible and accessible to them.
Yeah.
Right? And God forbid you work with people who are incarcerated, those despicable, dangerous people. Like, why don't you do theater with them? Yeah. Right? That is the history of the field. It is exclusive. It is white-dominated, meaning it has a Eurocentric and often Euro-supremacist kind of modality that says unless, until very recently, theater scholars have done some hard work, good work in the last 60 years to change this narrative that theater is only produced by special white guys who are somehow, just divinely anointed to be able to create work from the font, right? Work from the foundation, right? It's just divinely anointed to be artists. And so the theater historians, theater scholars have done some really hard work in order to shift that, destroy, break up that narrative, or just recognize it as a way of telling a history about theater performance. Yeah. But when I think about applied theater, I think I appreciate it as a way of making these distinctions, but I brought up the fact that too often, I feel like too often, it's still sometimes the field has this sense of missionary work. Like, we're gonna go and save those people, those poor people who, and it could be further too. If you really, take apart the idea, we're gonna make theater with people who are not gonna show up at the Goodman, they're not gonna show up on the regional theater stage, they're not gonna be on Broadway necessarily, like, they're not going to be, considered the font, right, of all theatrical wisdom. We've been making theater from the get. We didn't necessarily call it theater, we may have called it performance, we may have called it something else, but those are the people, I think back to early, because I'm a Black theater scholar and African American theater scholar, I think back to W.E.B. Du Bois, who's considered to be a sociologist and a historian, but also in the early 1900s in Harlem staged things that he called pageants. And the biggest one, the most well-documented one, is something called Star of Ethiopia, where he found thousands of people in Harlem to walk through, from Harlem, because that's where the majority of the Black population was at the time when he was working, to stage a pageant that Star of Ethiopia retraces 7 key moments, 7 gifts that African-descended people gave to the world. get to civilization. And they do it through song and dance and storytelling, huge masks, huge signs, right? None of these people would have been allowed on the American stage. Why? Because it's a time period of blackface minstrelsy. But they were making theater in order to recapture, retell, and assert a kind of indigenous local knowledge. And to create a space in which people could come together to learn their histories, to share and deepen it, and to share it with other people. And when I think about applied theater, again, with all the caveats, that's part of what I think the work is to acknowledge that there are a lot of people who the normal theater world is going to ignore, poo-poo. Dismiss and disregard, and we know they don't care about us. And we also have decided that we have invaluable stories to tell, and we're going to tell them because it makes us value. We know our value. Yeah. We are going to reflect our experiences back to ourselves, and we don't need an applied theater label necessarily even to do it.
Yeah, I think it's one. I love the notes you were saying about the history, because I think it also ties into a little bit, and what you said about it, being like back in the community and folks that wouldn't have been put in those spaces. I wouldn't be thought of as like the epitome of theater, like creating art and community. And it made my brain just automatically go back to Bilal and pedagogy of the oppressed, and where a lot of this origination of it came from me as well. So if you could like hop in and pop a few thoughts.
Sure.
But also just it's so interesting, I think, about the attitude, how the attitude has shifted in the last couple of years, especially in the last 6 months with Sing Sing coming out, and how it's completely starting to shift how folks are looking and focusing on the situation. I think it's very interesting.
So if people don't know, Sing Sing is a really fabulous film. It's up for a couple Oscars. It stars Pullman Domingo, but it's based on the Rehabilitation Through the Arts actual program at Sing Sing, the inspirational facility. They've been making work there for like over 2 decades. And this piece, Sing Sing, not Sing 2, but Sing Sing. Sing 2 is, that's a cartoon, but Sing Sing. It's about, this moment in which the group, based true story, the group of the men come together, they want to make a new piece. At the same time, a couple people are up for parole, new members come into the group. And it's not about the violence of incarceration, it's about how people, through an artistic, truly healing work, doing work through the arts, save themselves, save their lives.
Yeah.
And then I will give away the rest of the Catch it. It will be streaming in a minute.
That, and especially taking that healing and moving it also to that conversation of pedagogy of the oppressed.
I love when you talk about using indigenous knowledge, using the knowledge that's there. To me, applied theater is turning around the theater that we often call traditional theater. That rather than saying, okay, I know production and makeup and arts and I have the lights, etc., and so I'm going to use these tools to tell you something. You're going to sit silently, and I will tell you, and you get to applaud me when you're done. That rather applied theater begins with the theater, begins with who we are as performative human beings. And that may be redundant. I think Bilal would say that the very fact that we can perform and watch ourselves performing is what makes us human. It also makes theater. And so applied theater is actually using theater to do all this other work, whether it results in storytelling. And the other organization I work for, their byline is building community through personal story. And it's all a storytelling network. That's why I work a lot with incarcerated teens now, doing storytelling. But applied theater starts with and uses the art and the art that people bring to ask the questions, to develop the answers, to do the exploration. It's not a matter of someone with expertise from the outside telling us what we should feel, what we should see, what we should know. And that's the other big difference for me. Even theater with the biggest heart and all the theoretical and political beliefs that I have, If it's theater for people, it's going to be less powerful and meaningful than theater by people. And that's what applied theater does. It uses that which we bring as artists, naturally as artists, to examine and to raise the questions. And then we'll figure out what to build.
All right, I want to take this for people, by people train and kind of go a little further. I think we can open it up to Jasmine and also to Lisa to speak about the work that you've been doing in the community and also just how it, yeah, period. That was a question.
I thank you for setting that up and explaining that because I landed in this work not from an applied theater program. Boy, would that have been helpful, actually. But from a very traditional theater program where, I sang tits and ass, and it was totally typecast as the only Latina in this theater program and all the sexy roles. But the one moment I found a play that was not written by a white man or raised in the sun was when my theater professor put me in a room and said, Jasmine, you cannot graduate without knowing about Luis Valdez. And he showed me a play that I read that blew my mind. And when I read this play that had all these stereotypical roles that made me laugh and cry as I read it in my dorm, I realized that there was more to this theater thing than I had understood, even having been in my senior year in college when someone handed me that play. And I immediately fell in love with Luis Valdez because he was on the back of a pickup truck out in the cornfields and in the grape fields trying to use theater to unite the workers around fighting for their own rights, because they were fighting for their rights and they just needed more unity among the workers to lift the voice of the people so that they could win, because we win in numbers. And when I was laughing my butt off reading this play and then looking at his work, I understood that El Teatro could do so much more than what I was learning in my very traditional program. And I kind of busted out of school wanting to figure out, like, how do we do teatro in more interesting ways and more powerful ways, but I was like just a teaching artist in Chicago. And I realized quickly that, like I shared before, that the students had so much more to share, and these existing plays were so limiting. So applied theater became something I did out of necessity in all the settings that I worked it in. But when you asked the question of the original question was how do we use applied theater? In my mind, I think of the fact that we have absolutely been not recognized by the theater community in Chicago, even though I have placed us into spaces where they can know what's happening, because of the fact that it's for the people, and so it's not really for the stage or something. And even though we're actually doing shit that changes people's lives, we're not winning those dollars for social justice theater, because I don't have a writer that writes grants, and I don't have the team that will bring all that grant work to recognize the value of the work and thus make it sustainable. But what we do have is people that keep showing up even though we have no money, even though we have no support from like established institutions, although I will give a fantastic shout out to Looking Glass, because as a very long time artist, they did give me they did allow for support in the work by giving us their stage where we performed once a long time ago near the beginning, and then also paying another artist and myself to be the teaching artists for 6 months. And that was like real dollars in our pockets, and that made a difference. So I feel like there is ways established institutions can support the work, but really the work is about and by the people. And as soon as it's about me, it's no longer important or good. It is about us and what we're doing. And I say us because while I'm not a temp worker in a factory, I'm a very precarious worker in the arts. And art is labor, and through our work, we have experienced the ways in which people have tried to steal our art as labor work, discredit the work that we're doing, or ignore the work we're doing. And so, like, for me, it's like just like a real everyday challenge to do the work because it's very precarious.
Yeah.
So I'm in the same boat with my team.
Amen.
Yep.
Yep.
The
Very precarious.
you hit on necessity in there, how it is a necessity in the communities, like if we're trying to impact change, and that just made me think of working in the carceral system. So my experience is I worked with Shakespeare Behind Bars, shout out Kurt, at IYC as part of the Illinois Youth Center. So that's my experience in there. But Lisa, you have a lot more experience, so I'd love to hear about like how you've seen arts as a healing practice, as a necessity through the system. And you know, you have folks that have worked with you within the carceral system and folks that have transitioned to programming we have done outside, and just what that experience and that crossover has been like.
Right. Well, first of all, I'd just like to note that when I started Still Point Theater back in 1993, you know, deep within me was this vision to, as I said earlier, combine social justice with spirituality and performance and healing through the arts. And many years later then, I was asked to teach a course at an applied theater conference on the East Coast. They said, could you come and teach a course about theater in prisons? And I was like, sure. And I had to call Lisa Biggs. Remember this? Who was in Chicago at the time. And I said, could you come meet with me? What is applied theater? You know? And I was like, and I'll never forget it. Lisa came into the office and she just looked at me and said, it's basically what you do, but they're now calling it applied theater. And I thought, oh, okay, so I do applied theater. This is interesting, I never knew. And so I went to this conference and taught a course, and it was a wonderful experience. But, you know, some thoughts have been bubbling up within me that, as Kevin identified, you know, it is about healing, and that's something I was journaling about this panel last night, and that's something I definitely wrote down. But all of our classes, all of our workshops going into the prisons and the jails, and also working with women who've been released, who do it as a job, a part-time job, and get paid for their work, to doing theater with adults with developmental disabilities. Our focus is going in and finding out what they want to talk about, what they want to do their projects about, what they want to say on stage. And especially for me, for adults with developmental disabilities, it's getting a little better recently. Well, maybe it's because my focus is a lot on disabilities myself in my work. But, you know, when we first started Still Point, like the forum they had was for adults with developmental disabilities was like just Special Olympics. And you know, when people thought about them and their community, it was like, oh, Special Olympics. And that was, they didn't have a forum to talk about who they were and what they feel, what they're passionate about, you know, what it was like to come out to their parents. And so we did performances, you know, on these topics. And for me, it was a justice issue, you know, because they needed that forum. And they were artists. There were people we worked with and still do that are artists, and they want to express that deep down. They don't want to just sit and, you know, collate envelopes, you know, or do things that are just so dull and boring, and, you know. And just a couple snapshots. I remember I was teaching at MCC downtown, and I was going to talk about poetry that day. We're going to do poetry, and I ran out of time, big surprise, to find a formal definition of poetry. So I asked all of the women, I asked them, what is a poem? And they talked about, you know, what a poem is to them. And the woman was sitting across from me, and she said, oh, I've always wanted to write poetry. And so she wrote her very first poem. And it was, I want to be like the water, clean, blue, desired, and in all the parts of the world.
Wow.
Her first poem. I want to be like the water, clean, blue, desired, and in all the parts of the world. And when she did it in performance, healing, bearing witness, she stood up and she was bilingual. So she did the poem in English and Spanish, and a woman was behind her doing a very slow interpreted dance. And when her name, I'll just call her Maureen, when Maureen would be up there saying her poem, she would weep. She would weep through the whole presentation. And I can't really say exactly what she was feeling, but it just felt like it was so healing for people to be bearing witness to what was inside of her.
Sorry to interrupt, but I had one of my team members who can't find us, but is here waiting, so that's why I had to open the door. Oh, no, please come on in. Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect.
I would actually love Isabel to respond to that, but I don't see her, and I wonder if she could get back on. Because this concept of healing to me is all about conscientización, which is Augusto Boal worked with Paulo Freire, and popular education and this concept of conscientización is the idea that I, as an individual, become aware of my station in life and my positionality in the world. As a worker, as a wealthy person, as a mother, whatever my positionality is. And the team has always surprised me in how they speak about the work, and because they are constantly telling me about how healing it is for them, but I'm not a therapist. And I always tell them, in any setting as I facilitate, I always say, this is not a therapy circle, I do not have any letters behind my name, and please don't share more than you're comfortable sharing. Only share what you feel comfortable sharing, and don't feel forced. No one has to speak anything. You only share what you want to share in circle, and still, there's so much healing that happens. And I really think it has to do with the fact that, at least for this population, our population, when you've been taken advantage of, and people have taken advantage of you to such extremes over and over again, the pain is so right at the surface, you don't have to dig very deep to get to it. And if I tell you just a moment of abuse at my job or discrimination that I've experienced, you see yourself in that because it's happened to you, and you respond, and then we respond to each other. And the simple fact that someone sees me, I loved that blue water. I love that, right? The simple fact that someone sees me allows me to realize that it wasn't my fault. That, oh, it happened to you. Oh, and it also happened to you. And 3 weeks later, we found out it always happened to you too. That, oh, this is systemic. What's happening is happening to all of us on purpose. And that's not fair. And we can change that. And so being able to voice ourselves, to being able to activate our story in a circle of shared experience is very healing.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think Allison also.
Did you want to jump in, Allison?
Yeah, it's so great to hear everybody's histories and feelings. And one of the things that keeps popping into my mind as listening to people speak, and Lisa, thank you sort of contextualizing the history.
Because I think, in the 1800s, say for in this country, performance was assumed. Like, you could just do it. And then sort of in the 1890s, this notion of high art and low art somehow took over, and it was a way of excluding people who weren't white, and a way of excluding people of a different class. And the entire purpose and function of the art within society got really warped. And absolutely, there were lots of people who were not allowing this warp to continue or to feed into it, whether it's Du Bois or the Little Theater movement, which was really pushing back against sort of the nationalization of what good art is. And then you sort of roll forward to Teatro Campesino and Free Southern Theater and Roadside Theater and all these people who were like in the local is the universal, and in the universal is the local. And the other thing that I think that is so important as an underscoring of all the work, which was another thing that was undercut by high art and low art, this notion, is that I'm sure everybody agrees with me that everyone is an artist, right? And this notion at some point, and organizations for all the good they do, organizations like the National Endowment for the Arts, who help set the stage for sort of what we think is good theater, or, did over the years. We went to see them in 1989. We started Cornerstone in 1986. We would move into tiny towns without a history of live theater, and just do plays with the people in the community, just hanging out, and we'd often base it on a pre-existing text, but we, with the people in the community, rewrite the text to be about that town. Anyway, we went to the National Endowment for the Arts, and we said, we're great, and you should give us some money. And they said, we are never going to give you a dime of money because you work with non-professionals. And we were like, okay, well, hey, see ya. And then, in 1989, so this is a little more history than you might need, but Lisa started me down this path. Jesse Helms, who was a very, very, very bad person, got passed a rider that was appended to every NEA grant, that you had to sign something that said, I'm not going to basically do anything that's queer theater, homosexual themes, gender irregularity, or whatever the fuck their phrase was. And a lot of theaters took the money and said, fuck it, I'm gonna do it anyway, and a lot of theaters refused to take the money. But one of the other things that happened is that during this period, the funding for the National Endowment for the Arts, which did a whole lot of, actually, it's the same thing, that Nancy Reagan really liked the arts, and her husband was just this terrible person. He destroyed lives. But because Nancy Reagan liked the arts, the NEA had all this money. Anyway, Jesse Helms and says, we don't believe in the arts. We think the arts are evil. We think artists are evil. And so they cut the hell out of the budget. At which point the NEA comes to us at Cornerstone Theater Company, and there's like, so this whole community thing, can you talk a little bit about that? And, all the work you all were doing, or would come to work, it's like, well, yeah, it's always been there. It's just that you people decided to make us not unofficialized, right? As opposed to representing the size of the artistic spirit present everywhere on this land. And so I just, that's basically what I wanted to say, and I salute you so much. And I do, because I think, one more thing, I think it's about the story, right? And I think stories are so important, and they communicate so much, and they hold so much, and they touch so much, and they tell so much. But the notion that you get to tell your own story, and in a way, and that your story, not only does your story deserve to be heard, but you are the person to tell it, right? Yeah. Is completely different from a lot of traditional theater, where it's like, you have a great story and my body is gonna tell it, right? And that, that undergirds all our works. And I've never used the word applied theater just because it came up before, after I was around, but I do think that, that's sort of a common.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
If I can talk about both of the things that you said. The term conscientization, and I don't pronounce it as well as Desmond does. But the next step beyond that awareness is praxis, is becoming active in changing once you're aware of situation, and telling your own story and acting on your own story. Two very, very quick examples. I was working with an organization that works with runaway teens, and we were asked to come in and work with them on creating plays about their issues, particularly about what it's like to live on the street and run away. And we started working with the teens and said, all right, we're going to create our plays about, and they said, no, you're not. Because that's not what we want to talk about. We want to talk about what drove us out of the house in the first place, because that's where our lives changed, because that's where the importance is. And it was their using theater to tell their own stories that made it so much different than theater makers telling stories about them. The other example was one of the only times I cried in a workshop, and nobody knew why. I was working with 5th graders, and we had been doing stuff about problem solving. We had created an interactive visual and video exhibit that was up for 3 or 4 months in a gallery, and kids came in and spent their time, and then we did quick workshops. And one of the things we looked at before they left was a world in which the problems of violence didn't exist. Not how to solve the problems, but what would that world look like? And there were all sorts of responses, and 6 5th graders were the last to demonstrate. And they were standing one behind the other, like a train, and they each had a hand on the shoulder of the one in front. And I said, is that what you want to show us? And they said, no, we want to show you this. And every one of them took a physical position they could not possibly have taken without holding on to someone else. And at the same time, they were all doing their own thing. So everybody was doing their own thing. Everybody was supported. I wept. And these 6 5th graders showed us the world that we all want to live in their own, in silence, but their own voices, and their own discovery of what brings them together as a community and how they want to move through the world. And that's what applied theater does. It takes the stories that are wrong, and it puts them out there, and it puts them out there in the words and the bodies and the feelings and the structure of the people telling the stories. And the tools of applied theater is what's used to do that.
Ooh, thank you.
Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, our group of women who have been recently released from prison are doing a performance called Behind the Mask, and that they created themselves and will, embody a lot of what we are speaking about. And we started that program back in 2016, even though years before we had done another incarnation of that with another group of women for several years. But we've been doing this since 2016, and all of the women are paid for their work because we have discovered, of course, that's a very important aspect of them reintegrating after being released. So.
I'm gonna throw a big word out there. And my brain is trying to place it. When everything applies to every demographic.
When everything what?
When everything applies to every demographic. When it is
Shared?
not multicultural.
Universal, which is a word I try and avoid always.
Encompassing.
No, yeah, no, not diverse. It is you want all your pieces to be intersectional.
Oh, intersectional.
Intersectional. And the reason that we're up here deep in the back of my brain and I have to dig for it is I think there's something about sharing your story and telling your own story and being witness telling your story and someone else witnessing you telling your story that leans into intersectionality by that sense of I think that's what you were mentioning before, like that sense of self and that sense of placement, I think also gives a awareness and a empathy towards others' experiences. So that word popped into my head, so I kind of wanted to throw it into the space to hear if anyone had any thoughts on that. And I think in reference to how you've seen your work bring groups together.
How much time do we have? I know we.
Oh, yes, it is 12:15. It is 12:15, and I would like to give a second for the audience to also ask questions. So I think we have about like 7 more minutes for this conversation before we
And then
go.
we, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I respond to
Yes, yes.
I think that the way in which you asked in like one of the prep questions about like a big moment.
Yeah, most powerful moments in your experience.
To me, back in 2019, Workers Teatro was working with a group. I'm sorry, we were not called Workers Teatro at that moment, but our work was working with a group of workers, which Don Felix is a part of, in a factory on the southwest side of the city that was called Buoyant Beauty. And they were dealing with issues of sexual harassment and discrimination. And it had to do, Buoyant Beauty was in the line of work. It was a factory that was putting out product for Victoria's Secret. And Victoria's Secret obviously was not the name of the company, the factory, but they're like the big boss, right? And so using theater to help these women and men in this group fight back for the support they needed to get the attention of the owners of the factory to hear out their complaint was not happening. The organization that they were working with, a workers' rights organization in Chicago, had sent messages from the lawyer demanding that the factory would respond to them, would hear them out. They wanted changes at the factory. They wanted legal safety. They wanted all sorts of things, and the factory was ignoring them. And Don Felix will tell you if I'm lying, but they did several actions at the factory and on Michigan Avenue, holding cards, placards, very basic labor organizing work. And then when I started working with the group, we acted out the violence that they experienced on the line while packaging these products of Victoria's Secrets, which included a man coming and touching them, the women on the line. And we took that and put it on Michigan Avenue in front of Victoria's Secret's flagship store. And this group that was not getting responses got an immediate response that said, stop going there, because Channel 5 News, Channel 7 News, and we did a whole, you gotta work it out, so that we could put RuPaul on blast, loud music, and we did a runway moment to get the attention of the people with big fancy boas, and we wore pink shirts that the women made themselves, that they painted where they had been touched. So the handprints that were on their shirts were where they had been touched. And they did not like that, the factory. They did not like us going and making that, and suddenly they got a meeting. The meeting that they had not had for 8 months, they were trying. They'd not gotten that meeting. They finally got the meeting. And thanks to this organization and their lawyer and the women fighting for their rights, and men, because there are men that worked in that factory that were part of this team, they got the Illinois State's Attorney's Office now goes and checks on that factory to make sure that they are posting the workers' rights on the walls as they're supposed to, that they're giving the breaks that are supposed to be had. The person who was needed to get fired finally did get fired. You know, like all of these things happened, and it was just such a small moment, right? What we did in that moment was tiny in comparison to all the legal things that had to happen, but it was enough to turn the power structure for a moment to get that meeting finally. And Labor Notes, thank you. Labor Notes, which is a national organization that talks about workers' rights for all of the unions, mentioned our work, and it's like this big in their magazine, and then like their whole story is on the front page, and it's like 4 pages long, and then there's this little note about teatro, about using theater. But I know that that was that moment of intersection that made it work, where we managed to use our skill as performers and teatristas, theater artists, to partner with labor, which has nothing to do with traditional theater techniques, to create a synergistic opportunity that was necessary for the workers in that moment. And y usted dígale a ellos, don Felix, si estoy mintiendo. ¿Estoy mintiendo? I asked him, am I lying? Tell them if I'm lying.
This is the truth. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
So that's, to me, an intersectional way in which non-arts is supported by artists.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well,
In the same way that Luis Valdez on the back of a truck, organizing the grape workers, organized people to a greater good, using theater.
Yeah.
You can't negate all of the labor strategies that are necessary.
Yeah.
But teatro can be one of the arms of the work.
And it's almost to the point of like, for me at least, it's like it should be a part of the work. Like, at least it's proven that it's a necessity in trying to create change. And if we aren't sharing our stories, if we aren't actively displaying our stories for folks to say, oh, I have learned this information. Because it's so easy, when you're all the way up, it's so easy to say, oh, I didn't know that was happening in the factory. I didn't know that was going on. Oh, I've never.
Who makes my iPhone?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know who does it, but and all of a sudden when you present it in a way where folks have to digest it, and it's not about shaming them, it's about just being like, this is a story that kind of makes them have to open their eyes and show a different awareness.
And I forgot the other intersectionality that came to my mind. The reason I went down that pipeline is because of a lady who was on the street who suddenly became interested because she saw something that she knew, a level of abuse, and it hurt her feelings, so she stopped to speak to us because she had experienced that. In a totally different labor sector, but she had experienced that. And the other intersectionality was that we teamed up with the Victoria's Secret models when they were doing the hashtag Victoria's Silence. So while we were freezing our butts off on February 14, 2020 in Chicago on Michigan Avenue, they were in New York City and LA also demanding that the higher-ups at Victoria's Secret respect their bodies as models. And there was like, so the intersectionality of working together. They had their case, we had our case, but for a moment, we found ourselves all at the same intersection, and it really changed the outcome for those workers. They won that battle.
The
Quick factual thing. Just, Jasmine has mentioned Luis Valdez. You may not know who that is, but you may know his theater company, which is El Teatro Campesino. So if you've heard of them, and that's probably easier to find. Just wanted to make sure.
And then the last thing that is really ringing in my mind before I open it up to audience question is the immediacy of, because with theater, there's like, you have the pre-production, you have to make sure the writer wrote the script, you have to make sure the designers are available, you have to make sure everyone is available like 6 months in advance. Like commercial theater has this whole, you want to do one show, it's going to take you like a year and a half to get it set up. But there's something about the immediacy of the work of, it was an immediacy in response, it was an immediacy of action. It was in February,
Lockdown, we did not know what was coming.
That you were, and the willingness to deal with that discomfort of being out in the cold because the storage is more important, and the willingness to resist in that way as well. I just wanted to highlight those things. I feel like those are also important things to bring up. And talking about like applied theater in reference to social change of, not being like, yes, there are grandiose goals that we want to do a year or two from now, but there's also what can we do immediately right now by connecting with our neighbors, by connecting in our communities, by saying, hey, we want to do a festival, are you available to come and join? Would you like to join? And how does that all come together, Joe?
I know we're going to toss it to the audience in a sec, but I just wanted to build on that idea of impacts, because I feel like theater artists are often asked to, talk about what's the impact of your work, and the people who are asking are thinking more in a butts and seeds, like ticket sales kind of modality, which is fine, fair. We're in an economy, we need money, and it is frustrating to make work when people don't get it. They either you don't have audience, you don't have participants. But one of the things, like I think often applied theater people or theater for social change people are invested in is a kind of interchange in participants and in themselves. That has to happen before you get a butt in the seat, before the play gets written, before it's the showing up every day in workshop and saying, look, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna try this, because I'm gonna listen to you deeply, just hear how this resonates, and I'm gonna keep listening for what you need to figure out how I can be of service to you. That is a model of theater making that is unpopular. in the sense of not commercial, right? You're not gonna make a lot of money off, we all know, we're not gonna make a lot of money off of that. But it's actually the kind of, that is what happens in every theater.
Yeah.
Any good theater.
Yeah.
Right? Commercial, regional theater, for that practice, that leading practice, value, way of being in the world, that is what gets people excited about Mamma Mia or Rent or whatever, right? Whatever, what's the high school musical right now? Like the kids who are showing up to do that, they're not necessarily showing up thinking like, I'm gonna go from Lincoln Park High to Broadway. They're looking for community. They're looking to know that they can be seen, heard, understood, believe that they are valuable, that there is a community space in which they can grow, they can get. When I write about, because of Lisa's teaching, really I think about healing. What does that mean? As a word get used a lot in theater context. And we're not therapists, but we are really good. Those of us who are really good who do this work, we're really good about meeting people where they are, creating a space in which they can show up more fully, and helping them engage in what I call a process of self-repair. So I don't need to know what the thing is that's broken. I don't need to know. I don't think you're broken, actually.
Exactly.
However, if healing is a process of self-repair, we know that it also requires resources. Like I can break my arm, and it will heal, but it will not heal straight, and it will not be functional unless somebody helps me set this bone. With expertise. Please set the bone with expertise so I can use this. Right? And that's what really good theater people who are able to do that, that's the work that we do in the world. And if we, as people get poured into, they pour into us, they pour into each other, and that's where movement comes from. The movement starts here, in the still small space within.
Yeah.
And it begins with respect for the dignity of human beings.
Yes.
That's what we're working.
Yes.
And that's where it starts.
That
It's
is
so simple.
That it is so simple, and it is so, and we live in a world in which it is so devalued.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Because there are so many of us who, certain people do not think are human, or if we are human, that we are only valuable for the labor that they can exploit from us, and be damned with the rest.
And it's also from so many distortions we have about, because of othering, about who people are and what they need and what they feel. I was lucky enough to stand on stage performing as a villain, as an antagonist in a play, almost 2 years ago, exactly, in a very small village at a festival in India, and the audience knew. They knew the answers. They had the sophisticated analytical processes to come on stage and intervene in that play that a bunch of theater makers had made. And what they brought to what little seeds we were able to plant was astounding. Because we said, here's some seeds, what will you do with it? And respected their ability to do it.
Yeah.
Besides that, there's something fascinating about having someone yell at you in Bengali.
You gotta sit there and take it. Thank you all so much. Allison, I know, was there a last button you wanted to share before we throw it out to the audience for comments?
No, audience.
Okay, well, Lisa.
Yeah, just
I should have been like a playwright now.
You wanna go play right now?
Well, Lisa Biggs was talking about the inner work that happens between us in the exchange when we're creating art together in the spaces we find ourselves in. And I really wholeheartedly believe that's why, for me, it's so important that I continuously do my own inner work, you know, and get support and have people around me that can help me process what I'm dealing with. Yasmin, precarity is huge. It's huge. In my work, it has been huge. Just dealing with the precarity of not knowing, are we going to get funded? Are we not going to get funded? Or, you know, and being strong internally, or trying to be strong internally, because I don't always get there, you know, is so essential in this work.
We'll leave it open to, is there anyone in the audience that has a question? We got a hand?
I do. I would like to know how you become an expert better. I've done a little bit of what I would call 5-year work independently,
level program, or are you
I mean, I
looking?
think from what I've been hearing, a lot of it is in practice. It's just the listening and the learning and figuring it out. That's like part of our.
There are some great programs, and if you want, after this, I can tell you some of the places I know.
I
where
too will give you
there are
one
great
that's
programs.
specific about environment
Yeah.
and trauma. But, yeah.
I think you are right, though, that you're not going to get everything you want from one program.
Right.
You're going to have to look for practitioners, especially people, I would say here's some parameters, practitioners who are not fly-by-night, because we know those people who like, oh, I worked in the prison for like 6 weeks, and that's on their resume forever.
I read the book and I gave a workshop.
People parachuting into communities and then harming and then leaving. Be careful who you work with.
Yeah, so people like Cornerstone, Still Point, PTO,
Workers Theatre could use a volunteer.
Yeah, so like, do partner, be an apprentice with them, because no, a master's program is not going to give you everything you need. I mean, when I started, long story short, but I got my training in this began at a place called the Living Stage Theater Company, which was in DC, was part of Arena Stage, the big regional theater, super messy and highly successful for 36 years until Arena got a new board who thought it would be better to do theater with kids in the predominantly white and wealthy areas who could pay for it instead of working with all the other people in the city. So Living Stage got killed. There's a pizza place now in our building. I will never eat there. None of us will ever eat there because we know the hard work that we did. But I learned how to facilitate a workshop by being in community with people who've been doing it for 20 years. So anybody who's been teaching theater for social change in like a facility or a hospital or a whatever for like a minute, you want people who have got these values and these practices behind them, who will then shepherd you and teach you and not use you. Because there are those people too, who are just looking for interns to like carry their water for them. Oh, hell no. No. It will be messy, it is scary, you have to be vulnerable, you will totally screw up. But if you keep going, you get better and better and better and better and better and better. I mean, you're looking at people who've been in the game now for, I don't even know. 20 is like the ceiling. It's the floor, not the ceiling. So
I did a workshop with Robert Alexander in 1981. They go back a lot longer than 20 years.
Oh, yeah, 36. He worked with Zelda, yeah.
And I think even one of the things that stuck out to me when you were speaking was about, something about like being in space and like feeling like you're flailing. And I will say that actually leaning into that feeling and being vulnerable around that feeling has been helpful for me rather than harmful. I know when I go into spaces, I lead with full transparency. It was my first time doing the IYC program last fall, and I was completely honest and transparent with the teams in the room. I was like, this is my first time in a facility like this. This is it's my first time doing this. I am new to this. I think part of it is also going into the space, not with an idea of I'm here to impart, I'm here to, even with the cast analogy, it's not even I'm here to put the cast on. I think it's going in with, I have some materials that could be used as casts. What do you need help with? This is what I'm coming in with, and I'm wondering what you're coming in with, and I want to meet you there so that we can work together going forward. That's where I found success in really forming relationships. Not about it being about the teaching, but about like, we're both in here, we're gonna do it, so like let's figure out how we can do it together.
It's such an important approach because there's so much emphasis on perfectionism in our culture.
Yeah.
That is the depth of innovation, and what we need is imagination.
Yes.
We need, and imagination is the tool. That is the thing that we are experts at, like cultivating, encouraging, unlocking, right? And perfectionism will kill us. It is killing us. It is killing us. So being willing to be vulnerable and a little messy, yeah, I mean, prep before you go, of course, but to be honest. Hey, everybody, let's make a circle.
One of the attitudes that we go into work with is, if I don't learn something in this workshop that I am supposedly giving, then it hasn't been a success. It's constant growth. It's constant learning, because if we're doing applied theater, if we're working with people, they know. Let me put it a different way. One of the problems with so much of theater making is that people know the answers. And I think it's terribly arrogant to say, we know the answers and we're going to show you what they are. I think greater arrogance is to say, we know the questions you should be asking. And if you go in and share that search for the questions, then you won't do any harm. Because you're not going to say, I can't help you. You're going to be there together and working. Yes, you have expertise. Yes, you've done research. Yes, you know how to do theater. You know how to structure a play. But at the same time, you don't know what questions they need, the people you're working with need to ask.
I don't know, I want to tap into that idea for just a hot second to say, like, part of that walking in open to what's necessary is like what's happening right now. We had a plan for January, February, and March, and then Trump happened. And the raids that have happened in our neighborhood have screwed up, not only tragically affected people's lives, but have screwed up the plans, right? And so we pivoted, and suddenly it's like a mutual aid emergency crisis situation. And so where we were meeting at the church de Santa Ynez, which is in La Villita, right now our population of participation is mostly Latino immigrants. We've got our African American connection going, but they're not participating at this moment, so it made sense to keep it right in that neighborhood. When the raids happened, I was not going to invite anybody to meet in the space that's dangerous, not because Santa Ynez is dangerous, but because the neighborhood became like dangerous to drive. Not only are they knocking on people's homes and showing up at schools, but they're stopping cars on Costner, on whatever street, 26th Street. So I pivoted and I called Theater Y, which is in the black neighborhood, which is in North Lawndale. They're not doing raids in North Lawndale. So I asked and was completely transparent. And I said, not because everyone in my group is undocumented, but that everyone is always welcome to come. And amongst them, there may be undocumented members in the community that participate. I want to keep them safe, and I know that your neighborhood is not exactly the hot spot. It's close enough that my community can get to, but it's a little bit out of the ways of danger. And so suddenly we shifted, and people are coming, and sometimes no one comes, or 2 people come, because it's scary, because there's raids happening. So it's like, what do we need? And we don't need theater right now. What we need is a safe space, and the first rehearsal was not a rehearsal. It was a gathering and a conversation, because that's what the community needed. Even though we had this date coming, even though we had these other commitments, like we just pivoted to what was necessary, and that's part of the work. Like mutual aid is not under the umbrella, I thought of it, but actually it is. It's absolutely under our umbrella, as I deliver food, driven people to places, try to make things safe.
Oh, Allison, did you have something? Oh, just loving it.
I'm the emphasizing mutuality and interdependence is great and key.
Yeah.
I had like one more thought, but it is like 12:40, so we're 5 minutes past the end of this panel. I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for joining us up here today. Thank you for bearing with the Zoom difficulties. The panel and everything that is being recorded and streamed today is going to be available on HowlRound in perpetuity, because that's what HowlRound does. So thank you, HowlRound. And if you would like to go back, if you want to send this to someone to give their information, if you want to go back to just watch it again, please hop over on HowlRound and you'll be able to. Next up, we have lunch. So please take a moment. There are restaurants around that you can go and get food at. The Golden Apple across the street is a fan favorite. And there are also many options around. There's a FAQ list out there with everything listed out. When we come back from the lunch break, we have at 1:30, we have a creative tools for sustainable communities using the arts to engage community issues with Free Street Theater. That's starting at 1:30. And at 3 p.m., we have Workers Teatros Considering the Continuum of Abuse, a presentation and workshop as well. So those will be right after each other, and at 4:45, we have our second panel, Applied Theater in the Carceral System. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask anyone with a name tag on that is not on a panel. Right. Never mind. If you have any questions, find me or Marcel. Thank you so much for your time, and see you later. Thank you, Allison. I afford a microwave.
I still have a picture of Jenny and people wearing diapers.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Yeah, we can just, let's get the second.